I just came back from a trip where I brought this Ricoh GR IIIx to its first real vacation, and I gotta say, it's made me realize an added charm and delight to having it with you on a trip. So let's go over some of my favorite photos I took with it from the streets and landscapes of Switzerland, and I'll share some perspectives of what I was thinking about when capturing those moments. Of course, many of you that are interested in this camera already knows that it's so tiny that it actually fits in your pocket, meaning that for travel, it doesn't take up any luggage space whatsoever. So after a 13-hour flight, first day arriving at Luzerne, literally there was no agenda, and I was just free to explore the surrounding neighborhood. I didn't really think about which gear I should bring or carry for that day, and just literally slid this into my pocket and just explore the surrounding area. I did note plenty of cyclists on the street, so I just tried to find a nice background to frame them up. And also as a result of that aimless explore, I found this tiny park which offered some really good views of the lake and some landscapes. I've been to Luzerne before, but it was my first time finding this spot. And obviously this shot I exposed for the background, and I just really liked the framing with the trees to perfectly tell the story of a good relaxed day. The next morning was also quite memorable because it was the start of the real serious exploration and the first impressionable landscape views of Mount Pilatus. I totally loved seeing the tall trees around the trail because I seldom really see proper woodlands, but probably my favorite set from this area would be by making use of contrasting colors from the red cable car to the blue sky and green landscapes. Looking back at the experience, it made me think about how the perfect travel camera is one that doesn't get in the way of travel. And what I mean by that is that for this trip, I had very specific bucket list photo goals using my main Sony camera gear. But on the other hand, I also wanted to have some leisure, fun, relaxed, chill time. I'm going to be there in Switzerland for a very limited amount of time, and I probably won't be able to visit for many more years to come. So I would want to maximize the good photos that I can take while also reducing the setup time taking photos so that I can explore a bit more. Especially I was exploring with a friend who is a non-photographer, and that's going to be a very important point because during the trip, there were times that I'd feel a bit more conscious, and I didn't want to spend too long in every single spot figuring out the best compositions, setting up my tripod, changing all the lenses, which stacked up would probably take a considerable amount of time during the trip, and I didn't really want that because this trip is not just for my photography. For example, when we first went up to the Five Lakes Trail in Zermatt, it was still around the time of harsh lighting, so I thought I didn't want to focus too much on the photography and just reserve my energy for the sunset shoot hours from there. And so I was able to just soak in the views and appreciate the good start of the day. Even with non-ideal conditions, I quite like these frames to remember the glory of the Matterhorn on a clear blue sky day. The benefit of using the Ricoh in these kinds of situations is that there's no setup time whatsoever. I don't need to keep packing or unpacking it from my backpack, and I'm just simply ready to shoot at any point in time. These next images were just on my free time exploring around Bern and Zurich. Big cities, so I wanted to do a bit of street photography because I'm also trying to improve in this genre. Overall, I do think that I prefer the photos I took from Bern than in Zurich because the vibe just felt a bit more relaxed, it seemed. And there were even some people who were smiling at me while I was taking their photos. And I also saw the beautiful sunset from Rosengarten. I do think that some of the photos from Zurich were quite decent, like this photo of the traffic enforcer in his vibrant uniform framed by the cranes, and this one gorgeous backlighting hitting this man on a tram spot. This photo from a park, I just wanted to come up with a story in my head on what they were talking about. And I also explored the quieter part of town on a Sunday morning. But yeah, I think Bern Old Town just captured my heart a little bit more. Traveling to a new place means that everything will appear a lot more interesting from your perspective. Everything is new, everything is fresh, especially in a very beautiful place like Switzerland. So this next set of photos were taken from the Lauterbrunnen area, which is a very popular place to start off your hiking trips. And I just really love the combination of the epic mountains, the greens of the trees and the grass, and just the surrounding villages. And these are the times when I can be very, very trigger happy. I could take hundreds and hundreds of photos, but of course I wouldn't want to spend so much time editing each and every one of them. So the straight out of camera look of the Ricoh is going to be a very, very strong, solid quality of the camera. During the trip, I just used one specific film recipe, which is the positive emulsion. And I do think the color grading turned out really well, and it's one of the versatile recipes out there because it's very adaptable to different lighting conditions. And some other of my favorites from the Lauterbrunnen area would be this one from Grindelwald's Batch Alpsee Trail. Kind of stood out because I really liked how the cows pop in color in comparison to the landscape. And the framing also makes the cows look like they were guarding the trail. And this one I shot from the Lauterbrunnen village, framing the church and Staubach Falls with some couple walking across the street. You may already know that this Ricoh GR IIIx will have a fixed lens of 40mm full frame equivalent, and at the time I thought that for traveling it's going to make me miss a lot of photo opportunities because I can't really zoom in or out. Well, it definitely didn't cover all of my use cases, and that's why I still had to use my Sony gear for a lot of the photos that I wanted to take. These photos at least prove how capable this camera can be. There was actually a bit of joy in that simplicity of having reduced options in field because it just forced me to just work on the photography rather than spend a lot more time thinking about what type of perspective to use, what focal length I will be using for a certain composition, and just really had to work with the constraints that I had. So far, I've been making it sound like that the Ricoh GR IIIx is going to be the perfect travel camera for you. Maybe nearly. It does still have its limitations. For example, the battery life is quite limited because the battery is tiny. For a day, it probably could last you around 150 to 200 photos, which sounds a lot, but then I find myself for a certain composition easily take around 5 to 10 shots of the same framing because I'm waiting for the right people to pass by or the right patterns to emerge. And then another weak point of the Ricoh is going to be its autofocus. It's not completely reliable, especially in certain situations like low lighting. And I find myself missing a couple of shots I thought could have worked if the focus was right. But there is a workaround for this problem, which is to just get better at using the snap focus mode, which is probably something I'll talk about in a different video. So subscribe. And the next one is probably a me problem, but the blue lens ring of my Ricoh completely detached and I lost it. I didn't even know that it could do that. But yeah, those are quite small points and I absolutely love bringing this camera with me during the trip. And if you want to see that bucket list photo I keep mentioning about, which was the reason for this trip, then why don't you click on this video to see that experience? So I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.